If you find you're unsettled listening today, reach out to a trusted friend or go to tradespodcast.com and click on resources.
We are men in the trades, forging health in the drug poisoning crisis. This is
Off the Clock Toolbox Talk.
We're here today with Anthony Story, and we've got our guest co-host, Trevor Botkin, back with us again. Thanks, Trevor, for being here.
Yeah, I'm super grateful to be back for another episode. And our guest today is an outstanding gentleman that I've had the great pleasure of getting to know in the last 5 years of my own recovery. And I know he's a respected member of the construction community. So this is gonna be an exciting show. I'm really ecstatic that Anthony's here with us today.
Okay, so I guess we'll start at the beginning. Like, I grew up in a blue collar family. Ever since I can remember, my dad was taking me to company fishing derbies. I didn't realize it till later in life, but I probably shouldn't have been on those fishing derbies. You know, everyone was getting right into it, drugs and drinking, and I'm like, I think I was like 9 or 10, and they passed the point where they couldn't drive the patio boat, so it was up to me to be on the wheel.
Yeah, I've heard that story before too.
Yeah.
I bet you that one's not that uncommon.
It's super normalized behavior, right?
Yeah. And so everyone's using around me at an early age, and they're all hardworking blue collar men in concrete construction. I thought it was really cool at first. Man, I'm with the boys, I'm with the guys, right. I'm young, not many of my friends get to experience this.
Yeah.
I'm cool,
Yeah.
And, we didn't have much money growing up, and it was summertime, and I wanted some nice things. So I was 14, and I asked my dad, and I told my dad I wanted to work with him through the summer break. And so he got me going. Mm-hmm. And I worked at a concrete prefab company, and I started working when I was 14.
Jeez.
Cutting grass and whatever. Yeah. I couldn't really get into the industry, but I was doing around the yard and stuff like that.
Which I still got to give you props for all that stuff, because I know lots of people that made money in less constructive ways, less legal ways when they were 14. So you're still doing good.
Yeah. The other thing that came up too is with the money. I was making $1,400 every 2 weeks. I'm 14 years old. Like, I was doing good.
Yeah.
And we had a couple guys that would boot for us. And
there you go.
Yeah.
And that's when I was buying the BMXs, silver chains. Like, I was cool, man. I was buying the beer for everybody.
Yeah. 14-year-olds buying beer for everybody.
Yeah. I remember this one boot, he took me, he's like, "You're coming in with me." I'm like, "Oh, okay." He's like, "What do you want?" And told me to point at it, and I grabbed it. I told you, he's like, "Okay, I want that." And then sure enough, we got out of the liquor store, and I went and partied with my friends. And I don't know. I was always in construction. I was always chasing that dollar. My first experience with alcohol was when I was 8 years old. My uncle, I used to think of him as a hero.
Mm-hmm.
He'd come home bloody to my dad's, hiding from the cops. And he'd have a bottle of Wild Turkey or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he'd be passed out on the couch, and I'd get up and I'd see him, and I'd be like, "This guy's cool." In my head, I'm a little kid,
Yeah.
And I remember grabbing the bottle, and he woke up and he got mad, and he's like, "Oh, you want this?" And then, that was my first experience with that. And since then, the experiences I had with these fishing derbies and just male role models in my life in blue collar, the minute I had that alcohol, it totally eliminated any of my inhibitions. I felt like I found myself, like
who you're supposed to be.
Yeah, it calmed me down inside, in my head, my anxieties, and then I would start drinking, going to school. When summer break was over, I'd have a couple just take the edge off in the morning.
Yep.
And to deal with teachers because I didn't feel like I was the smartest, like focused kid, you know?
Yeah.
And some teachers are more helpful than others. Oh, that's the
Yeah,
kindest way I can
absolutely.
say it.
yeah, like I was the
Totally.
class clown, you know?
Yeah,
I was
Mhm.
the
me
guy
too.
that
Yeah.
they kicked me out of class. My desk was outside the classroom a lot.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I
totally.
was that kid.
Yeah.
um,
Very relatable.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. And yeah, fast forward, you know, through school. I don't know. I was always chasing that first feeling where I felt okay.
Mm.
And it was never okay when I look back at it. But
Mhm.
I was trying to find that just okay feeling in self, you know.
Yeah.
And I think I was about 16, I experienced with other drugs. And by 17, I was addicted to cocaine. And
Yeah.
Mm.
I thought I was having a kid.
Yeah.
And I told my mom that I got a problem. I need to go away somewhere. And my dad's first reaction was, well, we'll send you up to Fort McMurray to go work
Right.
with your uncle.
Oh,
There
wow.
you go.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause that's what, and then later on, that's what his dad did to him.
Right.
They sent them off to work with his uncle in concrete in Fort McMurray. And
You know, it reminds me of my father constantly, like growing up, you know, son, there's not many problems you can't work out, but so showing up to work every day.
yeah,
Like if you're there,
yeah,
that'll
totally.
solve everything.
Yeah.
Good day at work.
Yeah.
Well-
money was the root. Money was the root of
Money's the root of all problems.
it. Yeah, it is. It is, right?
And
Yeah.
You know, so I'm
And it-
17. What's
it
that?
doesn't
Go
get
ahead.
it doesn't get much unhealthier than Fort Mac.
No.
No.
Like when I
No.
talk to different service providers who have spent time up there, they're like, yeah, it's fucked up there. Like
Yeah, it
it's,
is.
you know, like
Wild
in
West.
every kid, mom, or family that I know where the dad is a tradesperson and is running from paying their child support is up in Fort Mac.
Yeah, I remember. So it was 2003, 2004 when I went up. I wasn't 17 yet. I had to wait 6 months. So I went up there and I worked at a superstore night shift
Wow.
until I was able to get in the union.
Wow.
And then I went to the union every day until they signed me up because my grandpa, my dad, everybody was in the union. So
Mhm.
went every day until they signed me up, finally signed me up, and then they did. And then I was making good money, so I was okay, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Everything's okay.
Yeah. And
No
then,
problems. I got money.
and then I wasn't actually having a child at this point. Like it was a false alarm, but I was enjoying the money, so I stayed.
Mhm.
Right. And then I turned 18 in Fort McMurray, and then the floodgates opened even more. You know, I was making a lot of money and I was legal age in Alberta. And I started going to Cowboys and drinking all night and then going to work. And yeah, it was a Wild West for sure.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know,
But how much does that skew your perspective when you come back to like reality? Like when you come back to a place where that isn't the norm, how like so many people I know found like they say the same thing. I came into the industry and I felt like I belonged. Like it was the first place I felt like I belonged.
yes.
And then you go work in it and then you go into other normal people places.
Yeah.
And my life, if I wasn't on a job site, I was in places I felt like I didn't belong.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah. It was like I was outcasted for sure. Like coming from Fort Mac and then coming home, you know, you know, all my friends wanted to hang out with me when I was home, obviously, right?
Yeah.
Because I made thick money and I
Yeah.
like to party. And the minute the money was gone after my little tour, then they were gone. So
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
I don't know.
How much separation has there been between your life as an individual as Anthony and the industry you serve? Like for me, there was for many years of my life, my identity, like everything about me was that I was construction Trevor.
Yes.
I mean, that was it. There was no separation for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like yeah, there was no separation. There was no, you know, I quit sports. Like I thought I found a niche in sports. I did, you know, I was really good at soccer. Opportunities to play for Canada, try out for Canada.
Wow.
And I wanted to party more and chase women. instead of practice and keep doing that whole running and all that stuff. So I lost interest in other things in the minute that I was making that big money. That's all that mattered to me, really. Even relationships never lasted. I didn't care, you know. Maybe at the time I said I cared, but really I chose the job over my relationships. You know, but that continued on. Like, I stayed in Fort Mac from on and off, very short periods of off, but from 2004 till 2016, you know,
that's a long time, man.
Yeah, I was always up there, you know, and like 2008 happened. The crash happened in 2008 and the plant work shut down. You know, they laid off 1,500 men in 2 days, you know, and that was a big hit. That was a lot of fear with a lot of people up there, you know. And luckily, my uncle and some friends, he overheard, he's done pipelining before. So 2009, I started pipelining.
Nice.
And that was a whole nother animal. You know, I was a gypsy. You know, I was pretty much a gypsy, and I didn't really need to care about anywhere I was. Wasn't there long enough, you know, so I could just burn the town down and move on to the next one, you know. And
what does that do to you? Like, I mean, in some ways it might be very freeing, but in other ways it's very isolating.
Yeah, it is isolating. Yeah, you're right. It is. It does. Like, I used to like, oh, I'm a gypsy kind of, you know, like, you know, I don't rest my head too long anywhere. You know?
Cowboy mentality.
Yeah, like what cowboy?
Right. I'm a cowboy.
I'm thinking Metallica right now. Anywhere I roam, Metallica.
Yeah, we kind of romanticize like so much in the industry, like the tough stuff. Like I still do. Like, I love how hard I worked and how, like, when we were digging in with the boys, and I still look back fondly on my transient years in the industry with that cowboy kind of like poetry in my mind. Like, I'm not attached to anything, but it did damage. You know, there's another side to it too.
Yeah. I know, because then it's like I'm always alone, really.
Right.
You know, I'm always alone, no matter what, you know. And towards the end of my addiction, that started to wear on me pretty heavy. You know, but yeah, so pipelining was great. Like, I loved it. I was in the forest, like, you know, like that aspect of it. But we partied hard, you know, we worked long hours. Like, I was working 72. We signed a paper, this one shift, this one job I was on, we signed a paper that we'd work over 50 days straight. And I ended up working 72 days straight. And my cousin just at the time, and he's a heavy duty mechanic, he crashed his snowmobile loaded, and he couldn't ride his Harley. So he's like, "Hey, I got a Harley for sale if you want it, and it's a nice one." And I'm like, "Okay." And after my 72 days tour, I went to the Padolin in Fort McMurray, and I gave him 14 grand cash, and I was like, "I'll be by next weekend and pick up my bike." You know, but before that, I guess before that 72 days shift, I was working with my brother and my uncle. I worked with my family a lot in the up north. My dad, my uncle, my brother, my other uncle, you know, we started to fight.
Okay.
You know, and I remember the anger that I had. My uncle was pretty rough on me.
Okay.
And I remember throwing him against the wall, and I was scared, but he was really scared. You know, all this stuff's coming back, so it's kind of, it's bringing the stuff back, you know. And I just took 8 years, so there's all this fresh things of when I got clean are coming up for me, you know.
Okay.
So I guess, you know, like, I love my uncle today, you know, I do, because I know how he was brought up, you know, but at the time I hated him.
Yeah.
You know, and I realized, like, I hated him. So I was trying to, I wanted him to approve, you know, like, I'm doing a good job, you know, but I never did a good job. You know, I think he was harder on me because we were family and we worked together. So he didn't want anyone else to see that he was giving me the easy ride. So
Yeah, exactly.
I get that, but at the time I didn't. I hated
No.
it, you know.
Yeah.
It wasn't good.
Very, very relatable experience with my father.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
But,
no, I'm hearing a lot of intergenerational trauma in
Totally.
your family, in
Yeah.
that, like everybody's been fucked over 20
Yeah.
times, and
Yeah.
that's the way that they're like, oh yeah, this is how you live your life. So
Yeah.
then they're making sure you're getting fucked over too, right? And
Yeah,
it's just like,
absolutely.
Yeah.
because this is how we live as men in this family, right?
Yeah.
Is we get
Gotta
fucked
pay your
over.
dues, son.
Yeah.
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 And it's just like, oh, like, so everybody needs to suffer and then some, like, that's how we want to live our
Right.
lives. But that is often the way that men have passed things down through the male lineage, sometimes the female lineage as well, but, generation after generation. And in many ways, I see that Gen X and millennials and, even Gen Z, like they're starting to say, we don't want to keep doing this, and we're going to start
No,
changing
exactly.
it. And that's, where you probably, Anthony, I'm assuming, I haven't heard the end of your story yet, but I'm assuming you've done some of your work, and that's where, we start breaking some of those things. But it's like, it's ingrained deep.
Oh, it's baked into the industry.
Yeah, and like I get it, like you said, the intergenerational trauma and being set up for life, from like say my dad and my uncle with the tools that they got, they're trying to set me up for life.
Yeah.
Right.
The tools that they got, they didn't have the proper tools. They did the best they could.
No. Yeah.
Felt like they were doing right by you. Yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful to have that.
I see that now.
Knowledge now. Yeah.
Yeah, I see it now, right?
You can let yourself off the hook a little, and let them off the hook. Yeah, I'm the same with my dad.
So when I started to nosedive, it's probably 2 years before. So say 2014, I started to go down because my drug of choice prescriptions were hard to find around then. And I started experimenting with something I said I'd never do. And my dealer's like, well, I got this stuff, but you don't want it. And I'm like, well, I'm dope sick. I want whatever the hell's going to stop that. And I started smoking heroin.
Yeah.
Something I'd say I never did. It would do, and like just totally threw it out the door because it made me feel okay again. And
necessity. Yeah.
And it didn't take long for that nosedive to happen. And once that started, right, it's like, oh, I'll never shoot it. This is what I said to myself.
Yeah.
Just gonna smoke it or snort it. That's all I'm doing.
There you go.
It's helping me not get sick. Right.
Yeah.
And anyway, so I remember I was home, went for a tear about 14 days, and I used to make quite a bit of money, and I spent all my money in those 14 days. I got the call, you're come back up, and I'm like, okay. So I started driving, and I'm like, oh, I better grab some other things to keep me awake on that drive. And I remember falling asleep in Golden on the highway going 120.
Oh, wow.
I bounced off the
highway.
Yeah, I bounced off the center guardrail, woke myself up, hit my head against the window, and then I was like, okay, better have a little nap. So I had a nap, and then I went off the road 2 more times before I got back to Alberta. And I was just tired,
Yeah.
I just drove too long or whatever, party too hard.
Clearly.
Yeah, and just a wreck. And anyways, this one foreman I didn't know at the time, but he used to be an alcoholic, and he was in the program. And he was giving me a hard time, and I'm like, why are you giving me a hard time? We're all like this, and I was thinking in my head, right? But he had like a soft spot for me, I think, a little bit. And he gave me a chance, and I still fucked it up.
Yeah.
But I remember that he was trying to, I look back at it, he was trying to help me, but I didn't take it, oh, I know better. I'm just going to go back home and I'll find another job or whatever, because I got hot-headed out there or something, and I got sent home, and I called him like, hey man, I don't know what's going on. Like, I almost got into it with this big guy, and they sent me home, you know? And I'm like,
Mm.
oh,
Yeah.
you know, he was instigator. He was cut me off on the highway or something. I was late for work. You know, I was being a dick.
Yeah.
So it was all his fault, right?
Totally.
Yeah. And so he's like, oh, Anthony, I heard you're doing this and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, no, you know, and he's like, okay, we'll take the day off and we'll try again tomorrow. He gave me a chance there, and it was starting to get rainy season. You can't work in the rain. So, oh, we got 14 days off. I'm like, okay, I'm going back home. So I went back home again, and that was it. That was the last time,
Yeah.
2016. I couldn't make it back. I spent all
Wow.
the money. I was like crying. I was crying because I was alone, but I didn't want to be alone, but I had to use a loan. I don't know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's very bad. The things that are going through my head weren't good. You know, like I
No.
was, it's like, why am I even here? You know, and
Yeah.
at this point, I have a 6-month-old son. I skipped over that. I have a 6-month-old son
Yeah.
that I had with the relationship that I burnt down the relationship. It was not a healthy relationship, but I was trying to hang on, you know,
Mhm.
Yeah.
didn't start out healthy. We were using together, and it was gross, but the child was brought into the world in that, you know, and yeah, my son's 6 months old. I was like, I got to do something different here. I was by
Mhm.
myself in my bedroom. I was high, and I was thinking like, I don't want to be alone anymore. And I'm at home by myself in Kelowna, you know, waiting to get a call to go back up to work.
Mhm.
Wow.
And I finally broke down. I was like, I need to get some help. I didn't know at the time, but I just called a family member that I thought that might be able to help. And it was my auntie. She said, yeah, there's a place down the road from us in Duncan on the island here.
Hmm.
And I was like, I didn't know what to think. You know, I was just like, okay, I'm going to get help, and I'll just go back doing the same life I was doing. Right. I just won't use drugs. I
Yeah.
won't be
Mhm.
doing heroin. I went to treatment, and but I had a deadline. I was like, well, November 23rd, I got to be out of here because another job's happening. So
Mhm.
the counselor right away starts laughing. Oh, you think so? Hey, I'm like, no, I know so. That's when I gotta go.
Yeah.
You know?
Gotta
Oh
get to
man,
that work.
so delusional. You know, I'm like 6 days in. I just got out of the detox bed. Like, you know, I'm like, I was kicking holes in the wall because it was not nice.
Yeah.
No.
And yeah, I told her where I'm going, you know.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Believe me, I know best. Can't you
Yeah.
see the history of
Yeah.
great decisions and how much I know?
Yeah, and then finally after 21 days in, I got about 6 hours of sleep finally, you know, instead of an hour a night for the first 21 days.
Yeah.
And then things started to change. I was like, okay, well, maybe that's not a healthy place for me to be going after this. You know, the outside world was scary again, you know. And anyways, I got out. I went to the second stage living, you know, and still focused on recovery, still thawing out from those years of
Yep.
use. And I got a job in Bear Mountain laying pipe in Victoria here. And I started laying pipe with this company on Bear Mountain. My first day, I'm walking on the site, and there's Lucky cans everywhere, Lucky
Oh,
beer cans everywhere. I'm like, oh, fuck, dude. You know, I'm like
Mhm.
40 days clean and sober at this point. I'm like, fuck, I used to love Lucky, you know?
Mhm.
And
yeah.
my foreman at the time, at the end of the day, he's like, hey, who's buying beer? And I'm like, he's like, oh, we want a beer? I'm like, no, I'm good, thanks. I don't mean to be disrespectful, you know, but I'm good, you know? And anyways, fast forward, I told him where I was at later, and he respected it, and he was proud of me. Fast forward 2 years ago, that foreman called me, and he's got 2.5 years sober now.
Mm.
What?
Yeah, dude, it's pretty
Fucking
cool.
right.
You know,
Yeah.
and like I connected with him. I tried helping another guy there that had an issue, and we've talked and stuff. But I don't know, it's pretty cool, the full circle on that. You know, it's cool to be clean and the trades and sober, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, we still connect. And
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. That's
There's somebody out there that needs to, that's looking for what you've got, right? Like,
yeah.
Mhm.
and is
You know, and
desperate.
like I only worked with those guys for about a year and a half because I was
Yeah.
still early recovery. I was still a shit show in my mind, you know.
Yeah.
and I still wasn't the best guy, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's
You
what
know?
I was thinking because, like, you said you were like 40 days clean when you started there. And I'm like, you haven't even started to rewire your brain yet.
Not at all.
Like
I was
you're
so
just,
crazy,
you're
man.
literally thawing is a great word. I don't know if everybody uses that one regularly.
I love
or
that
not,
word.
but that's a great
Yeah.
word for
Yeah.
what's going on.
Yeah.
But you still like, you haven't even started to do the work of
No.
rewiring your brain
No,
yet.
that's right.
No.
Yeah.
You know, and I didn't at that point, right? Because I wasn't doing good with that company. You know, as for just because of my emotions were still out to whack, out to lunch. Yeah, and then a lot of my friends started dying back home in that first year too. You know, and it was
And this was like 2016,
yeah,
2017.
yeah.
So right when the drug poisoning crisis was really starting to explode.
Yes, and like, you know, there's a reason I'm here today, and I full-heartedly believe that because before I went to treatment, before I asked for help to family members, I talked to one of my friends. He's like, Anthony, because he knew I was fucked. He knew it,
Mhm.
and he said a lot of our friends are going to start dying pretty soon. You know, and I was like, what do you mean? You know,
Yeah.
and I thought like, oh, because we're getting older, like, you know, I don't know.
Yeah. No, that gives
Anyways,
me
and it
chills when
was
you say that he saw
Yeah.
that coming.
yeah,
Totally
and it
gives
was
me
true.
chills.
Like
Yeah.
Totally true.
the first 6 to 8 months of my clean time, 8 men that I grew up with were gone, you know?
Wow.
And like you would notice that in a house party.
Yeah.
You notice that hole.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%.
It just gives you goosebumps thinking about it right now.
Yeah,
and
man.
I'm glad I'm here. And it wasn't until my 1 year that I really turned around for me
Mhm.
because I still had thought I could drink at some point in my life. And this other guy that I knew in the trades and grew up with, he had 18 months and I had a year. And I seen him at a funeral of one of our friends that just died. And in Kelowna, I went back to Kelowna for it. And he was going to the bar after the funeral. And I was like, oh, you can still drink? You know, he's like, well, I'll take some time for your brain to get right. I'm like, oh yeah, okay. I laughed because I was like, that doesn't work for me. I don't know, man. That's scary. You know, and sure enough, we talked for like the next 6 months here and there. And then I hear he died overdose,
Oh,
Wow.
you know, after that. So it's just like, I don't know.
It's just so risky. It's
Yeah.
so risky. And it has
Yeah.
nothing to do with how good you are, how smart you are. And it has nothing to do with that. It's just a poison drug supply. And
Oh, yeah.
if, occasional random use or even drinking is part of your social pattern, like, because once you've had a few and, somebody's doing lines or something like that,
You can
then it's
justify anything.
Yeah, you don't know.
I don't.
You never can tell.
To me, that's like the unique thing. Like, substance use and alcohol and the trades go back back to the start, right? Like it's the relationship between the two is as old as time itself. But right now, like, I don't know about you, Anthony, but I've lost some close friends that by any measure, nobody would have accused them of having a problem.
Yeah.
They just, it starts like they bought some shit on a whim from a guy they didn't know, or like there's always some part, but these are guys that I knew to be like completely straight for sometimes months on end. And they might grab a gram when they're going out on a Saturday night for a special, like they closing down the project or whatever. Right. And they get a bad gram, man. And they're done. Their family's got no dad anymore. And I think it's the consequences right now that are just so much more immediate. Can be so much more immediate and intense, right?
Yeah, big time.
Are you interested in talking about your son and your relationship and how that's affected your healing journey and anything related to that? Because we just talked about our dads and our uncles and the intergenerational trauma. I'd be interested to hear that.
No, like I think I've come a long way in that because there was a lot of shame around that, especially in early recovery. When I did go to treatment, I'm doing this for my son, I got to do this
Yeah,
for
yeah.
him. He needs me, you know? And then later it's like, well, I got to do it for myself before I can help anybody, So,
Yeah, yeah.
but anyways,
That's true for many things, though, even beyond substance use and addiction is it's the oxygen mask on ourselves first. And
yeah,
it's so hard because it's like, I don't need help. I'm doing
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
But it's
yeah,
critical for so many, like to move forward in our lives. We have to
yeah,
put the oxygen mask on ourselves.
yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. So my son, 6 months, he was 6 months old when I went to treatment. I got out of treatment and I was still just throwing child support at, I say throwing it because it wasn't, it still wasn't a part of his life in early
Yeah.
recovery. I was focusing on getting myself right still.
Yeah.
He was living with his mother and I was just sending child support every month still to her. Wasn't really active in his life, even in recovery. I was focusing
Mhm.
on my recovery. I was just hoping that things were good for him,
Yeah.
and they weren't. Um, me and his mother used together, and I think it was around my 2.5 year mark in recovery. My son was removed, and from his mother, that scared the shit out of me.
Yeah, I bet.
It's like I got to show up for this little guy, you know.
Yeah.
So I went and did some self work to be a better father
Yeah.
because I didn't think I was going to be a good dad, even
Yeah.
clean.
Yeah.
I didn't think
Yeah.
I didn't know how to be. Or I don't know. I was afraid of that. Once I did that work, my son's in ministry's care at this point. I went and got a lawyer and I started to fight for him
Yeah.
to get him on the island.
Good.
Yeah.
And it took about 6 months, and we got him on the island with help of my mother. My mother helped me out big time because
As
he
as
is on
moms
the
do.
autistic scale, you
Okay.
know, and hyperactive.
My
Like
kid too.
it's evolving, right?
Yeah.
But it's evolving, and he's high functioning. But yeah, so there's a lot of work, and
Mm-hmm.
I was getting ready to just drop everything and be his dad, but my mother really stepped up, and I'm forever thankful for that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, stepped up to help me out, and I just support him and her
Yep.
best I can where I can, and and he lives on the island now, and he's doing really well.
That's
He's
Yeah.
really fantastic to hear.
yeah, he's
And
doing really good.
you're not the first contributor that we've had on the podcast who's talked about that, and I'm really grateful that people are willing to talk about that, about
Yeah,
how their substance use caused them to lose their kids to the
yeah,
ministry,
yeah,
Yeah.
and how they got them back again,
yeah.
and that's an incredible story.
Mhm,
And I want to honor that
mhm,
because it's a heroic journey,
It
mhm,
is.
and it's really important for us to be able to do that work of changing that intergenerational trauma and
mhm,
changing the story, changing the
mhm,
narrative, right? So yeah, I just honor that whole story and that whole journey, and I'm really
yeah,
grateful to hear what's happening. And I
yeah,
know it's not easy. I know it's not
yeah,
easy for sure.
yeah,
It
and like
doesn't mean that it's not no fairy tale ending, but
yeah, that's
it's
right. And like I think I still have shots of, oh, am I doing enough? And
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's normal.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I think for any
You
parent.
know,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know, I just try to do the best I can each day. But
Yeah.
the other thing within the health or the journey is forgiving his mother,
Mm.
Hmm.
and just I guess leaving that door open for her whenever she's ready or whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever that journey looks like, just for her to be there,
Yeah.
without
And
me
wouldn't
giving
it
too
wouldn't it
much.
be beautiful if she found the same quality of life that you did and could do that
Yeah.
work
I
and
don't
could
really
be
interact with her much unless she
yeah.
contacts me. Like I'm not going out of my way, right? But I'm
Yeah.
always there to
Yeah.
if you know, she needs someone to talk to, or, you know, I can connect her with some women on the mainland that I know, you know,
Yeah.
if she's interested. I think she does. She said she's she's in recovery, but I don't know, you know, and it is what it is. It's her journey. You know, I'm
I
not.
can imagine she's got a lot to work through too. Like I
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know any feelings you had to work through, I'm sure she has to work through too,
Yeah.
especially if she's in recovery. And
Yeah.
what does that look like? I imagine it's even tenfold as a
Yeah.
woman.
Yeah. And I
Pressure
guess,
we put
like,
on them.
I don't know the exact word for it, but just being no judgment, you know?
Yeah. Yep.
Empathetic.
Yeah,
Empathetic.
empathetic, no judgment. Like, hey,
Yeah.
whenever you're ready.
Yeah.
You put anybody in those shoes with those circumstances, and they're going to be very, very similar. And you got to
Mhm.
have the right things going on, the right supports.
Yeah.
We talk about this all the time. Like, it's like, oh, every person's got to figure out their own journey, and they do, but we also have to put supports in there, right? And we just don't have, like, we live in such an individualistic society where, you know, there's like all the stuff you went through, Anthony, and, you know, all the pressures that you had on you with your dad and your uncle and, you know, your family who were trying to do the right thing, but you didn't have the supports that you needed to be able to flourish and grow and, you
Yeah.
know, do all the things. And, you know, it's the same for those of us who are really struggling and, you know, and trying to get those supports in place now for your son too, right? And it really does take the community, and it takes a healthy community. And this is where it's like when we're investing back in each other and you're able to do whatever kind of community you have around you, whether it's a 12-step group or it's sports for some people or it's churches for other people,
Yeah.
but some kind of community. But yeah, in this time of global burnout, it's like it's hard to contribute back to the community, but that's the very thing that's going to bring us back to health again. And
Yeah,
that's a role I was hoping that this podcast would play, is creating some kind of a community where people can see themselves in each other and in our stories and be able to realize that they're not alone and that we can give back to each other with our stories.
I really like that you said that too, because like as I grow in recovery, and it's not so militant, say like I'm part of Narcotics Anonymous, you know.
Yeah.
However, you don't burn your life down and you're happy, I'm happy for you today.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, that's where I'm at. It's like, hey, if it works for you, man, and you're living good, like that's where I'm at. You know?
Yeah. And if you're not,
that may be.
And if you're not, I'm not judging you. I just feel bad for you.
Yeah,
right?
dude.
I just want the best for you.
Yeah, dude, right?
How arrogant would it be to like get better, find the answer, and then, you know, be impatient with other people or not understanding or judge them, right?
Off the Clock Toolbox Talk has been a Fraser House Society project, executive produced and co-hosted by Karen Jansen, managed by Delan Young on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples. Production of this material has been made in part through a financial contribution from Health Canada. The views expressed herein do not necessarily reflect the views of Health Canada or Fraser House Society. The content of this podcast is conversation between people with living experience and should not be taken as professional advice. Special shout out to the Construction Foundation of British Columbia, improving the social economic health of our communities through trades education, training, and research. CFBC.ca. Help save lives. Go to tradespodcast.com and click on the link under Enter to win a $200 grocery card. When you fill out the survey, you help us understand what's working and what's not. Each survey for each episode listened to is a separate entry. Information collected is for survey purposes only and is not shared. Help us, help you.